Jabba, and 2 Night Sisters. Hold them down here so we can zoom in and let you guys see what's happening. Yeah, so Jabba and the 2 Night Sisters all have 2 dice faces in common. See, they've all got a disrupt. Jabba's got a GZ2 disrupt, and they all have a discard, and Jabba's got a 2 discard. What's nice about this is, since Elite Jabba cost 14 and the Night Sisters each cost 8, you can still get to 4 dice. And you've got 25 health, so you're not shabby on survival. You don't have a ton of damage output from Jabba, but you got a lot of other interesting options. So the combination we want to get going here is we want to use one of the least commonly used sides in Star Wars Destiny, which is the Disrupt side. So we've got 4 dice on the board just to start with that have Disrupt. And there's an interesting support called My Kind of Scum. So My Kind of Scum says after you resolve a die showing Disrupt, you may exhaust this support to gain resources equal to the number of resources your opponent lost. So your opponent has to lose resources, but generally you can get them to do that every once in a while, especially when you have a ton of Disrupt in your deck. And you can really ramp up your resources to pay for cool things. Things like Crime Lord, getting rid of characters by having this upgrade on Jabba and then using its special to spend 5 to defeat a character. The battlefield we're going to use is Mos Eisley Spaceport. It says return one of your upgrades in play to your hand to gain a resource. The reason we're going to do that is we've got 2 zero-cost upgrades in our deck, Sith Holocron and Hunker Down. Both of those are fine to return back to our hand. We can always discard them to look for better things, or we can play them again the next turn for free and start just generating resources to pay for these Crime Lord abilities. So I'll walk you guys through the deck really quickly. Like I said, we're focusing on Disrupt, and we've got a ton of cards that have Disrupt on them. Jetpack has a Disrupt side, so does Force Throw. It's got 2 Disrupt sides. Force Choke, who's got 1. You've got some additional discard in On the Hunt and Force Choke. No discard from Force Throw, but some pretty good control options. And no discard from Jetpack, but you've in general got a lot of discard and a lot of disrupt, so hopefully you can keep powerful things out of your opponent's hands and keep the money on your side of the board. There's a bunch of different win conditions, like I mentioned. We're going to be trying to Crime Lord people. That doesn't always work out. I don't want you guys to discount these Night Sisters. These are actually really powerful characters. You've got 2 faces that show damage, 2 faces that we're trying to focus on at a resource. Just about anything you roll other than a blank is pretty good. And just by throwing a Holdout Blaster and a Jetpack on a Night Sister, you can get up to 7 damage rolling her without spending any resources. And with her reroll ability, it's not that uncommon that you're going to reroll dice and be able to resolve a lot of that damage. So there's 2 copies of Backup Muscle as an additional support. This just helps you finish off a character if you need to contain something while you're saving up for Crime Lord, and sometimes you can just finish out the game that way. So yeah, we'll walk through the upgrades. Like I mentioned, we've got 2 Sith Holocrons. It seems a little bit silly to include those when you've just got 2 Force Chokes and 2 Force Throws, but a first turn play of a Holocron on the Jabba really sets the tone of the game. It forces your opponent to focus on Jabba, because they know you could be throwing down a Force Throw or any of those powerful blue upgrades onto Jabba, which could really ruin their day. So if you get a Holocron in your first turn, where you throw it is really going to dictate who dies first. So if you want them to focus on Jabba because you have a Holdout Blaster and a Jetpack in your hand, then throw it on Jabba by all means. And if you want it to focus on the Night Sister, keep Jabba alive because maybe you've got My Kind of Scum and some other yellow support, then you can kind of direct where they're going to attack. So for other upgrades, we've got a couple, one cost upgrade on the Hunt. So it has plus ranged plus melee. Melee won't help us very much. The key here is actually this special. You can remove shields from characters, which might help your Night Sisters kill things off, but you can also spend a resource to remove one of the character's dies when you remove their shields, even if it's 0 shields. That's really powerful. You're going to have a ton of money from My Kind of Scum and all the shenanigans over here. So you're actually going to be able to use that as a pretty good removal option time and time again in the game. Like I mentioned, we've got Force Choke and Force Throw. Both of those are kind of control-y. Their specials let you either remove a die or change a die to a blank. You can also use this to damage Jabba and change the Crime Lord to the special. That way you're no longer falling to randomness. So, really powerful cards. I already mentioned Backup Muscle. We've also got the Holdout Blaster and Jetpack to support our Night Sisters in case they need to kill something. The things to talk about. You can see we got 10 events down here. Just about every event we have 2 copies of Flank, 2 copies of He Doesn't Like You, 2 copies of Electroshock, 1 of Dodge, 1 of Isolation, and 1 of Feel Your Anger, and 1 of Deflect. Those are all removal events. If you're in a melee heavy meta, you might want to ditch dodge and deflect for something that removes melee or maybe another copy of isolation. But I found in the ranged heavy meta, those really help your characters survive. If you're really going to crime lord people, your characters are going to have to survive until you get to 9 or a few less resources. One of the tricks we can talk about, or I wanted to mention, is the cheaper way to get Crime Lord is you can holocron in a force throw, use that force throw for a couple turns until you have 6 resources or something. Your opponent's probably going to think you're going to play Crime Lord and then have to save up the money to actually remove a character, but you could just discard that force throw and play the Crime Lord for 1. Especially if you haven't activated Jabba yet, you can get that Crime Lord out there and then force choke him possibly to set it to a special right away. The last thing I'll talk about quickly, and then we'll maybe look at some mulliganing strategies and initial dice rolls, is that all of your characters have some pretty nifty abilities too. Not only do they have the size we want, both the Night Sisters can be damaged to re-roll the die, so you can control your opponent's dice or your own dice that way to try to get to the conditions you want. I found there are a lot of times when I just had to damage the Night Sister over and over again to force my opponent to re-roll just to keep my things alive and things in check. Jabba's also got a re-roll. After you activate this character, you may re-roll a yellow die. So that would allow you to re-roll Jabba, Crime Lord, On the Hunt, Jetpack, but also your opponent's dice. So if someone has Django or Balatik against you and he rolls that 1 critical natural range damage and a bunch of modifiers, you can re-roll that natural damage on Balatik using Jabba when you activate him. So that's really powerful. So we'll group our deck up over here, do some shuffling, and see what we get mulligan-wise. Generally, you don't have to mulligan too much with this deck, which is kind of nice. You will have to sort of decide your playstyle based on your initial draw, and hopefully we'll see what that means here in a second. So we're going to zoom in a little bit and draw to 5. This is a pretty good setup. We can play Hunker Down on someone and we can return it. One of the advantages of returning this is it gets discarded if it gets hit by melee damage. So a lot of times you can save it by returning it to your hand and you still mitigate 1 damage that was done to a character. We probably don't need this much removal, so we're going to throw Deflect and Flank back. Jetpack is a pretty nice card to keep because on the Night Sister you can get to 5 damage. Oops, 5 damage that first turn. So we're going to shuffle and draw 2 more. We got 2 copies of Electroshock. That's kind of ironic. So we've got a ton of removal, but you have options to do something like play a Jetpack on a Night Sister first turn, and then roll Jabba to re-roll that Jetpack and help you later so you don't have to use so many re-rolls in your Night Sisters. I've found that your opponents are really going to focus on Jabba hard early, so it's kind of good to get these Electroshocks early. If you had the option of a flank and an Electroshock, you probably keep the Electroshock just to get over your having to spot yellow characters. So yeah, one of the other things that's really great about this deck is it's got a pretty good battlefield taking dice roll. We don't have any 3s on our characters. It's probably not going to cooperate with me right now. But we can get 3 there. I'll discard. Kind of funny. But just the Night Sisters alone have 4 1s and a 2. So there's no double blank characters. And Jabba's got 2 2s. So one of the things I didn't mention earlier is Jabba has a ton of focus, which again is really helpful for setting up those Night Sister kills or for focusing your own things. Your own things like Crime Lord and stuff like that. Let's get these cards back in there. Do a couple more test draws. Let you guys see how things go. So we're going to shuffle, 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 and draw up to 5. So here we got something interesting. We know that we're probably not going to be able to play Crime Lord right away. It only costs 4, and it does provide some interesting sides. You've got a 2, a 3, a 2, a 2, so some great options there. I'd probably toss it in this first game, or in this setup. I'd keep Electroshock. We probably don't need both backup muscles. It doesn't hurt to keep them, though. I'd probably keep something like this. I obviously can't afford all of that. Oops, I keep searching. But it's nice to have some options, so we'll draw. Perfect. We got a My Kind of Scum. This is the kind of thing that if you really want to go the disrupt route, you almost want a hard mulligan just searching for that My Kind of Scum. So yeah, we've got the options to play our Holdout Blaster on the Night Sister and roll her, or we could play My Kind of Scum, set the tone. Once you've played this and then rolled Jabba, well, we'll use Jabba's fancy reroll ability. Right? Didn't work this time, but if you did roll a Disrupt face, Disrupt, that 2 Disrupt with My Kind of Scum on Jabba really forces them, once you have that out, you just roll Jabba or a Night Sister first turn every round and hope you get Disrupt, because it'll force them to spend all of their resources. If they were planning to hang anything back for events or for all-in, they're going to have to get it through dice rolls, because you are going to, most of the time, once you get your upgrades out there, leave at least 1 Disrupt out there in your die pool, in your active pool, because you just want them so fearful of gaining resources that they almost don't even do it. That's the other nice thing about this claim is, if they do claim our battlefield and decide to return something to their hand to gain a resource, first of all, you'll probably be able to discard what comes to their hand, because you've got 6 discard in your 4-character dice. And you'll probably be able to steal the resource, or at least get rid of the resource using Disrupt. So it's a really interesting battlefield, and I really like it with these character choices. So thanks for tuning in. I'll probably record a couple more games on TTS and post those on YouTube as well. Hope you guys enjoy this deck and enjoy exploring the Disrupt side of Star Wars Destiny.